So lawmakers in Congress are proposing new stimulus relief bills that would help the American people financially during this crisis. And everybody, Democrats in the House, including Nancy Pelosi, are making it their top priority to get President Biden's Build Back Better bill passed over the next coming weeks. So if you're on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or Railroad Retirement Benefits, then continue watching this video, because you want to know the latest news about stimulus check informations and the Social Security news. So there is a lot of new changes to the fourth stimulus package, and I know that there are a lot of Americans in the country who have called for Congress to pass a fourth round of fourth stimulus checks, especially with the crisis still having an impact on society. I definitely do believe that Congress should provide financial aid for millions of citizens. It is likely that more economic support would arrive soon for people. But in order to be eligible for some of these programs that are set up to help struggling U.S. families and citizens, there are a number of requirements that must be met. Congress previously approved 3 rounds of stimulus checks to be sent out to the majority of people. The first was $1,200, that was approved back in March 2020, and the second was $600 in December 2020. Now, President Biden pushed through an additional $1,400 stimulus check as part of his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. So far, there are nearly 100 congressional lawmakers that have pushed for recurring checks until the end of the crisis. Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota and 52 other Senate Democrats and 52 other House Democrats wrote a letter to the President and Kamala Harris pushing for recurring stimulus checks at least until the economy fully recovers, as with equal payments to adults and dependents. So in a letter to Biden, the group wrote, "One more check is not enough. Another one-time round of checks will provide a temporary timeline, but when the money runs out, families will once again struggle to pay for basic necessities." So it was very encouraging to see the inclusion of direct cash assistance in your current economic rescue plan. Recurring direct payments until the economy recovers will ensure that people can meet their basic needs and shorten the length of the recession. Millions of people have still signed online petitions urging the federal government to provide more aid, including recurring monthly payments of $2,000. The Change.org petition was launched in 2020 by Stephanie Bonin. It has since become a rallying point for Americans, urging Congress to approve additional economic assistance. There were some senators calling for a regular stimulus check to be sent out to help those citizens who were kept out of poverty as a result of these payments. But the issue is that the responsibility for widespread financial aid is now in the hands of the state government. This means that it is likely that there's going to be another state stimulus check for eligible state residents. As of the latest round, California will have issued more than 8.2 million second Golden State stimulus checks in direct deposits valued at more than $5.9 billion. Gavin Newsom's administration said that 2 out of every 3 Californians are eligible to share for a share of $12 billion in Golden State stimulus payments. The original program aimed at Californians with low incomes. It was expanded in July to cover people making $75,000 or less. Most Californians who qualify don't have to do anything to receive the payments as long as they have filed their 2020 tax. Georgia has already taken action for their residents. Georgia's Board of Education approved a plan to help out educators who have struggled and faced hardships amid the crisis. The plan doles out $1,000 bonuses to full-time teachers and $500 to those teaching part-time. Maryland is also another state that has approved stimulus payments for the residents. Stimulus checks of $500 for those who received the earned income tax credit and $300 for those other taxpayers who were approved as part of the state's Relief Act. Some in the state have even advocated for higher payments. So, do you think that President Biden can get this job done, everybody? Tell me in the comments down below. And what do you think that President Biden should do to approve more stimulus payments?
Yesterday, Mr. President, by a large margin of 342 to 92, Congress took the first steps towards creating the most important upgrade to our post office in decades by passing a bipartisan reform package that's been years in the making. With an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote in the House, it is my intention for the Senate to quickly take up and pass this bipartisan, bicameral postal reform bill. We hope to take action here on the floor and pass the bill before we go to the President's Day recess. The Post Office is quite simply one of the most important institutions of American life. Every day, tens of millions of Americans, veterans, small businesses, people living in rural communities, seniors, rely on the Postal Service for their medicines and prescriptions, for getting essential goods, for voting, for correspondence, for their livelihoods, and to get close to one another on special occasions like birthdays and anniversaries and things like that. But nevertheless, our Postal Service has needed reform for over a decade. Its budgets are severely strained, its delivery services are overwhelmed, and the disruptions unleashed by the Internet have made it harder for it to meet its obligations to the American people and to its own employees. Every one of us has heard objections about letters arriving far too late. In many instances, whether they be checks that people depend on for their livelihoods or prescription drugs or whatever, this is because these complaints are growing and growing and growing. The bipartisan postal reform bill offers a much-needed reset. It'll guarantee delivery services continue 6 days a week. It will put the post office on a path back towards solvency, and it will ensure that we take care of our dedicated postal workers while also saving the post office over $50 billion. Let me summarize again. If this legislation is passed, it would ensure continued 6-day delivery service, make deliveries more efficient and timely, and will put the post office on a path to stability. I want to recognize my colleagues who have made it possible for this legislation to move forward. First, I thank my friend and colleague, Senator Peters, Chairman of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, for his leadership in bringing this bill together. I also want to thank Ranking Member Portman for working across the aisle on this common-sense reform bill. And I want to thank all my House colleagues who worked assiduously for a long, long time pushing for portal reform. Both the chair and the ranking member of the relevant committees supported the bill on the floor of the House yesterday. I've always said Democrats will work on a bipartisan basis whenever we can pass common sense legislation that will improve the lives of the American people. Last year, bipartisan cooperation helped clear the way for such things as the historic anti-Asian hate crimes bill, a much-needed competition bill, and our bipartisan infrastructure package. This work period alone, we have already made great progress on bipartisan priorities, like ending forced arbitration for sexual harassment and assault. As I've mentioned, we'll soon act on the post office. And I expect both sides will support passage of the short-term CR that will keep the federal government open before next week's deadline. I want to thank the appropriators from both sides of the aisle for working in good faith, and I'm optimistic that soon they will arrive at an agreement for an omnibus package, which is far more preferable to the alternative of a year-long CR. We're getting very, very close to coming to an agreement on top-line numbers, and as I said, I am more optimistic than I've been in a very long